Hey, welcome back. Today we watched The Way, Way Back. Let's just jump right into it.
Oh.
The Way, Way Back is a coming-of-age tale about a young boy who's learning to come out of his shell, essentially. What did you guys think about it?
Who wants to go first?
Obviously not you if you're asking. So
It's just
let's reel this
I
in.
don't want to jump on you.
Personally, let me start, okay?
Yes.
I picked this movie because it spoke to me, when I first saw it spoke to me personally, because I had feelings of being sort of an outcast or someone who didn't quite fit in, whether that was at school or, growing up in a house where everyone is just different. And sort of stepping into the shoes of Duncan, the main character, and sort of feeling the same emotions of, not really knowing social cues or, not understanding how to talk to girls or even your own parents. It's very relatable.
When did this movie come out?
2013.
So this is past your awkward stage.
Yeah, I felt I felt like I could relate with
So
Duncan.
it's
I feel like we're all going through our awkward stages still.
Yeah. No, but I was just wondering if it was like during the time you were the same age as the character.
It was just more of like
Kind of
I
reminiscing.
saw some of my younger self in him.
Okay. Yeah. I think I turned to Keegan during the movie and I was like, this kid kind of goes through what I'm going through right now. I don't know. It just like, have you ever been like with your family and you're just kind of like sitting up in the corner?
Well, I could relate to that scene specifically.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just like 14-year-olds.
That's still me.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a scene particularly where Duncan is literally sitting at the end of the table while everybody else is talking and laughing and conversing, and even his own mom, who is trying to fit in with her boyfriend's friends, is having a little bit of trouble. So they're sort of akin in that way as well.
Yeah. There were a couple of moments with him that I felt were like kind of out of character for like a kid like that, because I was kind of a kid like that, and if a friend of my parents and then my mom tried to get me to dance with them, I would not even think about like even standing up to their request.
Right. Well, he kind of gets pulled into it.
Well, right,
and
but
he's just like, while I'm here, like my only ally, my mom, is making me do this too. So he probably felt trapped.
Also, the breakdance scene, like I felt like that was a little bit more of him coming out of his shell, but I felt like he started dancing way too quickly for that moment. Like he just started like actually dancing. I was like, yeah, that's not how that kid would.
Well, yeah, and I don't know. It's supposed to just be him.
I know, but it would have been more of like I would have probably believed it better if there was a bit more coaxing from probably my favorite character, Sam Rockwell. He's always my favorite character in every movie he's in.
You stallion, you.
But because in that situation he was kind of like, oh no. Whereas I feel like if he were to be the one that's like, yeah, you can dance as good as them, then I would probably like believe it more.
He's literally sort of throwing him into the wolves on his first day, probably to just sort of test his mettle or whatever. But he pulls it off.
And then also, I mean, we're kind of getting the spoilers with this, but I felt like there wasn't enough build up to when he like exploded on his mom about her boyfriend cheating on her. Because, like, he barely talks to his mom throughout the entirety of the movie, which makes sense. But, like, his explosion on her is almost like... in another movie, it would have been after, like, maybe 2 or 3 conversations where he's trying to get her to realize he's not as good as a guy as she thinks he is. Whereas there weren't any of those types of scenes, and then he, like, explodes on her and is like, what more evidence do you need? I'm like,
I feel like it was a very teenage way of handling things, though.
Yeah, but in terms of, like, writing wise,
Right.
I feel like there should have at least been, like, one, like, scene between when he finds out and that scene where he's, like, trying to hint at it.
Well, there is, like, I mean, at least in that scene, earlier in that scene, he's looking at her and she just kind of, like, is just sort of, like, trying not to make eye contact with her son, who is, like, looking at her as if he's saying, like,
Right, but there's
like,
no,
you're
like,
just gonna
there's
let
no
him-
connection between the two of them in terms of, like, him trying to get her to realize that he's not a good guy. Like, we get he feels that way, and we get she's having trouble communicating with him and all that. But there's no, like, scene that really, like, drives it home.
maybe there should have been a scene between her and him, like, just talking things out.
Yeah, just
Or,
kind
like-
of in general.
Right. Well, yeah, because the whole movie he's basically just trying to avoid, you know, his mom and Trent, the boyfriend,
Right.
who is played by Steve Carell, who's a great actor, obviously known more for his, like, comedic roles, but
Especially when he screams Pam in this.
Ah, this is our receptionist, Pam. Pam! Pam! Pam!
But also, I would also say with that same scene, when he blurts out that the kid's dad, when Steve Carell says that the kid's dad doesn't want him, like, I felt like there also wasn't really any build-up for that.
Yeah.
Because, like, his other dad was barely mentioned, and then suddenly it's almost like this reveal, and I'm like,
well,
it
earlier
it didn't really hit me.
earlier in the movie, he's talking to Anna Sophia Robb's character, and he's basically saying, like, yeah, my dad's, like, living with a girl, you know, they're moving, like, to a place in San Diego. He's like, it's not a good time right now, you know. So, like, I guess you can read between the lines and say that, like, his dad is just trying to focus on himself and isn't really
Yeah.
concerned about what his son is going through.
Right.
He's just sort of in like, just wanting to move on with his.
Right. I think it's just me having trouble with the screenplay because I feel like in order to get certain points across, they have to kind of be, like, sprinkled throughout the story.
Yeah.
And it felt like the dad thing wasn't really it wasn't, like, focused on enough for that moment to be, like, a gut punch, because in most movies that would be a gut punch, and also it's a pretty, like, standard gut punch where it's like, of course his dad doesn't want him, that's why I was sad. You know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I kind of, when I saw that, I was kind of thinking of what Chris was thinking. It was like the conversation he had earlier, where it's like, maybe he doesn't know because he's only 14, but, like, us, the audience, were kind of getting that maybe the dad doesn't want him because of this other girl that he's seeing.
Right.
Right.
He probably sees his son more as a cock block than, you know, someone who needs, like,
Yeah.
attention and care and, like, you know, a dad.
The other thing is that I was also thinking that maybe Steve Carell's character was just saying that because he kind of been painted as a jerk, you know? Like, he might have been just saying that to, like, be a jerk in the situation.
Well, and I think he was saying that more just as retaliation for airing
Yeah.
out his dirty laundry in front of everybody.
Yeah.
So he needed like something. And Steve Carell throughout the movie is very like, you know, passive aggressively just sort of making it known that like I'm putting up with you because I want to be with your mom.
Yeah.
You know, like if we're going to make this work, if we're going to be a family, like all this stuff. He like preaches all this unity and oneness, but in practice he fails like pretty much every thing that he's trying to instill in Duncan. You know, by like how do you see yourself? I see you as a 3. You know, basically saying that he doesn't like Duncan as a person. You know,
Which I was actually, when that scene, that's the first scene is when he asks him that. Like, he's like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you see yourself? He says like a 6, and he's like, well, I see you as a 3. You need to be something. You don't go out of your comfort zone, blah, blah, blah. I was half ready for the end of the movie for them to have come to like a understanding of each other, like another movie. Like some other movies would have like that character and him like go through a journey together, and at the end of the movie he goes like, he's like, how do you see yourself now after summer or whatever, and he's like, I see myself as a 7 or an 8, and then he goes, I see you as a 10.
see, and I mean, yeah. And I think, you know, maybe in
That's
Trent's,
more the crowd pleaser.
yeah, in like in Trent's sort of mindset, maybe he meant it as something a little more
Inspirational. Like,
yeah, but
reach for
just
something.
the way that he said it was just not at all received. Like,
Well, and he's also projecting.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
he doesn't
yeah.
think that highly. I think he thinks of himself as a 3.
Right.
And so he's kind of just putting on him because he doesn't want. In the back of his mind, he doesn't want the kid to be a 3 as an adult. So
Oh, I
that
see.
might be what he's trying to get at.
Well, could you also see like that when Duncan kind of stumbles into Joan and Trent like sort of making out on the side of the house, Joan, who's a married woman to Trent's best friend, you know, and apparently it's alluded to that they hook up every summer behind her husband's back. You know, he's like, you know, is kind of standoffish and is sort of like pushing her away, and she's like, oh, well, not this summer, I guess. You know, like, oh, things have changed now that you have somebody.
She's pushing him away, but his nose is still touching her.
You, fatty.
Steve Carell, honestly though, you are like a fine wine. You're a good-looking older guy. Just had to throw that out there after making a nose joke about him.
I'm sorry.
So what did you guys think of the water park staff?
They were fun.
Their whole...
Honestly, whenever he was at the water park was when I was more interested. Because I like Sam Rockwell is doing his like kind of Sam Rockwell shtick, but like he's throwing a bit of nuance in there that I was appreciating, because for the most part toward the beginning I was like, oh, he's just doing his Sam Rockwell stuff, which I like, but I was pleasantly surprised when like there's a bit more depth to him as it went along. But
He isn't just sort of a two-dimensional, like, quippy character. He has, like,
right,
his own issues.
which
and
is like
his
which
own
is Sam
arc.
Rockwell.
Yeah.
He tends to go for those roles apparently. How about you, buddy?
I mean, they suit him.
There was the one character, what's his name? The guy, the one that they celebrate at the end.
Oh, Lewis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Jim
like-
Rash.
I thought he was funny. Like, you think that he's gonna be like the character that's like kind of kooky, you know, and he kind of is like that, like slapsticky or whatever.
He's sort of a stick in the mud, though.
But he did fine. It was funny. I laughed at parts that he did. It wasn't over the top or too bad.
One thing I really liked is at the end, because after everything explodes, Duncan, reveals that they've been, hooking up, like Trent and Joan, even though everybody like knows what's going on. He goes to the water park and like passes,
We got to start having faster conversations.
Okay, so at the very end, as they're driving away,
Yeah.
his mom makes a very deliberate decision to climb from the front seat all the way to the way, way back where Duncan is sitting.
She meets him where he's at.
You see him, start smiling, and they're, sitting there with one another, staring off. They're looking in the same direction. They're on the same page. Like, there's an understanding between them, which I thought was a great visual representation of their relationship. Because he's all alone in the beginning. She's asleep in the front seat, unaware of what's going on. And then, in the end, they're both, unified in the back seat.
And as they're both sitting back there, Steve Carell yells back, "Hey, what number do you see yourself as?" He doesn't answer. Then his mom turns and goes, "A 10." I just really wanted that to come back up and like was sort of like apparently.
So now I know why the movie's called The Way, Way Back. When first Chris talked about it, I thought it was going to be a time travel movie. So I'm kind of disappointed, but it's still a good movie.
Like Mr. Peabody in the Wayback Machine.
Yeah.
I think my biggest issue, that is kind of my biggest issue with most kind of like indie films, is that the presentation is never like that great for me. Like there's,
What do you mean?
like the filmmaking, like there's like not much dynamic shots that are like conveying something. Like
They had a
it's
couple in
mostly,
this.
well, a couple doesn't do much for me.
Is that
Like it's just a lot of just like standard framing.
a
like-
budget thing, or is that just someone?
I think
who
it's more of a time thing.
Okay.
And I don't know what the budget was on
Well, and I
this.
don't
and,
even.
like,
I don't know if the story necessarily like.
every story necessarily could use it.
Yeah.
It's like more of a minor thing. It's just something that I personally, whenever I watch these sort of like coming of age, like independent sort of stories, most of the time the like presentation of the filmmaking and everything isn't like that. Not that it has to be showy, but it just has to at least have some interesting stuff going on with how it's, filmed and shot and
So
framed. And
who was like the director? Was it like a newer director?
So it was. I think it's Nate Faxton and Jim Rash were the directors. So the guy. So Lewis
Okay.
is Jim Rash.
Oh, okay.
And then I think it's Nate Faxton, Faxon, is Roddy, the guy who like operates the slide.
Okay. Like there's
like I said, it doesn't have to be like showy. I just wanted a little bit more in terms of like I wanted to be able to go like, oh, that was an interesting take, or like, oh, that was an interesting framing that they did there. And
I like some. Okay, to kind of go a different direction. They kind of did do some things.
you know what?
They made a movie.
You're right.
They made a movie.
No, it was very competent. Everything was it's just one of those movies where I don't know.
Yeah.
It was all right. Also, I would say it probably fits along with a lot of other like low budget movies and all that, but I don't know if you guys will get what I'm trying to say, but this movie felt like a book movie. I don't know if it's based off a book. Is it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I know what you mean though.
But yeah, like it feels like it's almost like not too much happens. There's no real like plot. There's just stuff happening.
Because most of
like,
the storytelling is told through the narration.
yeah, it's like a book. Nothing too crazy happens, and it's more character like based, but like
The scene direction might also
like it's almost like, okay, might be what I'm trying to say, is that the story could probably lend itself better as a book than as a movie, especially since the filmmakers didn't like do anything with the filmmaking to portray what's happening in the story.
Okay.
I won't say they didn't do anything, but you know what I mean.
I'd give it 1 thumb up. I would give it 2 thumbs up, but there is a little left to be desired, but overall, it's a solid thumbs up for me.
The story was fine. Everything was fine. Nothing really stood out to me. But yeah, it's like a good middle of the road type of movie for me. It's not bad. It's not good. But it's all right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna do like a middle of the road thumb too, because there was some okay things about it. It's not necessarily the movie that I would pick out of watching a movie. It's not really my type of movie, but it was good for what it was.
All right.
And
screw me, I guess.
the main character was relatable. Like,
You probably should pick up better movies.
anyways, the main character was relatable. Like when I was a kid, same thing with me when I was 14, except for without making the friends and kissing the girl at the end. So there was that. And
Yeah, you still haven't gotten there.
I'm hungry.